We're going to move to question time, and I will draw to the attention of honourable senators the presence in the gallery, in both galleries, a delegation from the Parliament of Singapore, led by Speaker Peng. On behalf of all senators, I wish you a warm welcome to Australia and, in particular, to the Senate. And with the concurrence of honourable senators, I invite the Speaker to take a seat on the floor of the Senate. And Senator Hume.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. This morning on Sunrise, the Minister for Housing told Australians, and I quote, "We have more fuel in Australia circulating in the economy at the moment than we did before the conflict." Is that correct?
I'll just wait for order. Order, particularly on my right. Minister Wong.
Thank you. If I may, with the indulgence, also just add my welcome to Speaker Seah Kim Peng. Welcome to the Parliament and welcome to the Singaporean delegation. And we are very appreciative of our partnership, as was evinced by the joint statement between Prime Minister Wong and Prime Minister Albanese. So we thank you for your presence here today. I think we've been very clear, Senator Hume, that whilst we have continued to receive the shipments of fuel as anticipated, we know that what has occurred in the Middle East is an unprecedented shock to energy markets. It is an unprecedented shock. As the Minister has explained publicly and in the other place, our fuel supply is currently secure, but we are very cognizant of the ongoing disruption of global energy markets. What that requires is the government to work together with community, with business, with the states to ensure that we deliver the fuel to where it is needed.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Hume.
Relevance, President. I just want to know if the Minister's statement was correct. Is there more fuel circulating now than there was before the conflict in Iran?
Thank you, Senator Hume. The Minister is being directly relevant to your question.
As you might recall, and I didn't see the interview in question, but as you might recall, the Minister, Mr Bowen, has also released 20% of our fuel and diesel reserves, and obviously that has.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Mackenzie.
A point of order on direct relevance, Madam President. The minister that Senator Hume was referring to was Minister O'Neill, not Minister Bowen.
Senator Mackenzie, that isn't a point of order. Minister Wong, please continue.
Well, perhaps I wasn't making myself clear. I understood it was. Thank you, Senator Cash.
Minister for Housing.
If I may, I am actually trying to treat the question with courtesy.
Minister Cash, please be silent. Minister Wong, please continue.
Through you to Senator Hume, I understood the statement was made by Minister O'Neill. The point I was making was that Minister Bowen has released 20% of the MSO. Obviously, we have seen more of fuel and diesel reserves circulating. The
time for answering has expired. Senator Hume, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to assume that Minister O'Neill is correct, Minister Wong, because I haven't had an answer from you. And if that is the case, and there is more fuel circulating in the economy than before the conflict, how is it that Australians right across the country are pulling up at empty bowsers and being turned away?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Wong.
We are very conscious of the experience that Australians are having, both with higher prices, but also the challenges in getting fuel in certain areas. And we see this. We are working to address it. And this is time for adult, sober, serious policy, not what Senator Mackenzie is engaging in right now.
Order on my left. Minister Wong, please continue. Minister Wong, please continue.
As I was saying, those opposite might seek to play some politics with this. We think this is very serious. This is very serious. Senator McKenzie, after your performance yesterday, no one here thinks you're serious. After your performance yesterday, nobody thinks you're serious. No, well, I'm responding to the Senator Cash. I'm responding to the interjection. What I would say to you, Senator, is we recognise that this is a very significant shock to energy markets, and that's why we're working to address.
Senator Hume, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. The messaging from the government is confusing. Clearly, you have lost control of the situation. More than 660 service stations across the country have run dry of at least one type of fuel. How did the government said that there was plenty of fuel supply just a few weeks ago and mocked warnings as far-right extremist scaremongering let this spiral into a nationwide fuel crisis if there is more fuel circulating in the economy?
Thank you, Senator. Order. Come to order, Senator McKenzie. Minister Wong.
Thank you. I again say this is a very serious shock to global energy markets. We are very conscious of this, which is why we have taken the action that we have taken, which including the appointment of a fuel task force coordinator, the convening of National Cabinet, beginning the release of 20% of fuel reserves, to change petrol standards to get more fuel flowing, to change diesel standards so refineries can supply more diesel, tasking the ACCC to ramp up fuel price monitoring, engaging with international partners to ensure we can see supply continuing to flow, and engaging with the states and territories on supply and distribution, including through activating the National Coordination Mechanism, which has met twice, and the Oil Supplies Emergency Committee 6 times. Now, these are just some of the things that the government is doing, and we know more will be required.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Marielle Smith.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Iran's dangerous and destabilising attacks across the Middle East, including on civilian infrastructure, are creating security threats and global economic instability. Can the Minister provide an update on the conflict and the Australian government's response?
Thank you, Senator Marielle Smith. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Smith for a perspicacious question. As she is aware, and we are all aware, this is a conflict that continues to destabilise the region and the world. Iran has attacked civil shipping in the Strait of Hormuz and has threatened to mine the waterway. And the weaponisation of the Straits by Iran is impacting oil and fuel prices worldwide. And what this does demonstrate, colleagues, is the willingness of the Iranian regime to inflict economic pain on households and businesses across the world. And I'll take the interjection from the Australian Greens, who seem to forget that the consequences for global energy markets are as a consequence of Iran engaging in attacks on civilian infrastructure, civilian and commercial shipping. So you may want to minimise that, Senator. You may want to minimise that, but we do not. We do not. And we reiterate our call on Iran to cease their indiscriminate attacks on other countries in the region and on other countries in the region. I thought you cared about civilians. I thought you cared. But, you know, I don't hear from the Australian Greens the condemnation of the attacks on countries who were not taking part in the strike, on countries that were not taking part in the strikes and on civilian targets. We want to see critical energy supplies flow to partners and to our region. We join
Senator Wong. Senator McKim, I'm not quite sure which part of come to order, Senator McKim, that you failed to understand. But I am serious. I've called you to order. I expect silence. Minister Wong, please continue.
We join G7 foreign ministers in reaffirming the importance of safeguarding maritime routes, the security of supply chains and the stability of energy markets. What is occurring in the Middle East is putting pressure on supply chains, on petrol prices and on the global economy. It is a difficult time, but we will continue to do all we can to support Australians through this time.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Marielle Smith, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. The conflict in the Middle East is causing major shocks to energy markets around the world. What actions is the Albanese Labor government taking to help shield Australians from the impact of this volatility? It's my question, not yours, mate.
Order. Order. Minister Wong.
The longer the conflict in the Middle East goes on, the more disruptive the impact will be on the global economy and on Australians here at home. That is why the government acted early to manage impacts on all Australians. We have introduced new laws to double penalties for petrol companies engaging in price gouging. We've convened National Cabinet and appointed a National Fuel Supply Task Force coordinator to ensure that all levels of government are working together to support Australians. We have tasked the ACCC to ramp up fuel price monitoring and issue on-the-spot fines, and we have begun the release of 20% of Australia's fuel reserves to get more fuel flowing to where it is needed. We on this side of the chamber will continue to work with industry, with states, with regulators to help ensure fuel goes to where it is needed and to ensure Australia remains resilient in the face of this global energy shock.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Smith, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. The conflict in the Middle East requires strong leadership and serious engagement with partners and stakeholders. Why is it important to work in the national interest to address the conflict's threat to our economic security?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Wong.
I'm just waiting.
No, just
Order.
a small section, actually.
Order. Senator McKim. Minister Wong.
The Albanese government is serious about helping Australians through this challenge, and what is needed is a sober and sensible approach to policy and to politics. What we need is adult leadership. Regrettably, that is not what we see on the other side or at that end of the chamber. We see Senator McKenzie backing, and I'm sure your colleagues would be interested in this, Senator Cash. We see Senator McKenzie backing in the Greens and Senator Pocock on public transport, only to see her colleagues sprint for the exit. And we see the party of John Howard backing One Nation on economic policy. The party of John Howard backing One Nation on economic policy, supporting One Nation's cash disallowance, increasing costs for small business, giving more opportunities to organised crime, making life harder for working people, and in your panic to back One Nation, what it makes clear is a vote for them is a vote for you, and a vote for you is a vote for them.
Minister Wong. Senator Ruston.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Aged Care, Senator McAllister. Home care workers rely on fuel every day to reach older Australians, especially in rural and regional communities. Yet providers are warning that the federal government's fuel emergency framework doesn't recognise them as essential fuel users. Can you confirm whether home care workers are excluded under the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act, and what immediate action the government will take to guarantee that vulnerable older Australians will be able to get the care they need?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President, and thank you, Senator Ruston, for the question. I can inform the chamber that this is an issue that is being monitored closely by Minister Ray. So global uncertainty is causing real anxiety at home, and Minister Ray is closely monitoring the impact on aged care providers. Providers can seek support through existing aged care business and viability supports that are offered through the department, and the government stands ready to provide that support through the market adjustment program, through dedicated.
Please resume your seat, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, President. On a point of relevance, I actually asked whether the aged care workers were excluded under the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act. I was wondering if the minister could answer my question.
Thank you, Senator Ruston, and the minister is being relevant to your question, and I'll continue to listen closely. Minister.
Thank you, President. As I was indicating, the minister is keenly attuned to the issues that the senator raises in her question. The minister is monitoring the situation closely and has confirmed that there are a range of existing programs that the department offers to aged care providers to assist them, and they include, and I was running through these before Senator Ruston made her point of order, the Market Adjustment Program, dedicated First Nations support programs and business and workforce advisory services. It is incredibly important that all Australians understand the steps that are being taken by the government to manage what is a difficult situation internationally and which, of course, is flowing through to Australians. And so the government has doubled the penalties for false or misleading conduct in the fuel market, tasked the ACCC to ramp up fuel monitoring, announced a temporary reduction of the minimum stockholding obligation for diesel and petrol, and established the Fuel Supply Task Force to coordinate a national response to fuel security and supply chain
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ruston, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. We've heard directly from Meals on Wheels Australia that the rising cost of fuel and its unavailability in some areas is already impacting services around the nation. If this continues, this could have a serious impact on older Australians who rely on Meals on Wheels for their nutrition and their safety. What is your government doing to ensure Meals on Wheels can keep feeding older Australians as the fuel crisis becomes more acute?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. And in my answer to the primary question asked by Senator Ruston, I talked a little about some of the programs that are in place to support entities that work within the sector. Those, of course, are relevant to the question that Minister Ruston is asking now. I can indicate to the chamber that the Market Adjustment Program, for example, provides funding to ensure continuity of care for recipients where critical viability risk has been identified. The Rural and Remote and First Nations Aged Care Service Development Assistance Panel offers free professional support to aged care providers in rural and remote areas, or who provide care to First Nations older people to build capability and sustainability. And the Business and Workforce Advisory Services offer free, independent and confidential advice to improve business operations, financial management and workforce strategies.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ruston, second supplementary.
Not-for-profit home care providers who are already under pressure from your government's botched rollout of the supported home program are now being forced to consider increasing their per-kilometre rate just to stay viable in this fuel crisis. This means older Australians will receive less care because their home care packages simply won't stretch as far. What is your government going to do to ensure older Australians are not priced out of the care they need because of rising fuel costs?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. Well, the government has been incredibly clear about our concern about rising fuel costs and the steps that we are taking to manage the impacts of the crisis in the Middle East and any flow-through implications for our economy. And the Treasurer has been clear in recent days that this situation is concerning for the economy generally, and of course we think about it in the context of the aged care sector. It is why the steps that the government is taking to deal with these issues matter for all sectors of the economy, including the aged care sector that Senator Ruston's question alludes to. It's why we are introducing new laws to double penalties for petrol companies who price gouge. It's why we've convened National Cabinet, and it's why we are engaging with international...
Minister McAllister. Senator Ruston.
Thank you, President. On a point of order, I'm really keen if you could ask the Minister to return to the question so we can understand what the government is doing in relation to older Australians, given that she won't answer the question.
Senator Ruston, there's no need for the dialogue.
Sorry, the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act.
Thank you, Senator Ruston. I've just indicated there's no need for the dialogue. The Minister is addressing the question and I'll continue to listen carefully. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. As I'm indicating, the government is keenly aware of the impacts, and it's why we are taking the many steps that we have, tasking the ACCC to ramp up fuel price monitoring and issuing on-the-spot fines.
Thank you, Senator McAllister. Senator McKim.
Well, thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, Australians are being smashed at the petrol pumps while fossil fuel corporations rake in...
I'm sorry, just resume your seat. Senator McKim, Order on my right. Senator Kim has the right to ask his question in silence, and I expect there to be silence. Please, no, you can just continue, Senator McKim.
Start again. I'd like the clock
Senator
reset,
McKim,
President.
I am running this chamber. Senator McKim, just continue your question.
Well, I couldn't even hear myself, President. Can I ask Senator Wong, could you hear my question?
Senator McKim, I draw your attention to Standing Order 203. Now, no, I haven't finished yet and I haven't called you. Prior to me sitting you down, I called you 2 or 3 times and you ignored me because you were interjecting as well. Now, I expect there to be silence. You're not in a debate with me, Senator McKim. You are not in that debate with me. Please continue your question.
Minister, today the Treasurer claimed Labor's bill to increase penalties in Australia's competition and consumer law will, quote, help tackle price gouging at its source. You said something similar today in the chamber, and Senator Ayres said something similar yesterday. Isn't it actually the case there are no provisions in Australian law to stop fuel companies price gouging, and the bill that you have introduced will do precisely nothing to change that because it simply increases penalties on existing offences? Why are you, the Treasurer and Minister Ayres engaged in misleading and deceptive conduct against the Australian people?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Order on my right. Order on my right. Minister Wong.
What we are doing is trying to support the Australian people at a difficult time, and what we are doing is implementing a range of changes which are about trying to prevent companies from price gouging and taking advantage of the situation that we see. Now, you're entitled. Senator McKim is entitled to his political view. He's not entitled.
Order. Order. Senator Waters, come to Senator Ayres. Order on my right, both at this end of the chamber and at the bottom end. Minister Wong, please continue.
We are seeking to support Australians at a time that is very difficult, and for which there is, there's not a silver bullet that can magically resolve the conflict in the Middle East, the effect on international energy markets, and the ongoing longer-term effects in terms of disrupted supply chains. One of the aspects of what we have seen is the need is excessive prices, and the advice I have is that behaviours that lead to excessive prices are already prohibited, including cartel conduct, price fixing and false and misleading information. So there are strong laws in place to tackle price gouging at its source, and the expectation is from the government, and I'm sure from the community, that the ACCC should be throwing the book at petrol retailers who engage in illegal conduct which leads to unfair higher prices, such as price fixing, acting as a cartel, or making false and misleading reasons for their price rises.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McKim, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Well, none of that constitutes price gouging. But, Minister, the price and availability of fuel is the #1 topic of conversation around this country and the biggest current domestic impact of the war that Labor thought was such a great idea and has joined Australia to. Why does the government think it's okay to bullshit the Australian people about what you're doing about petrol prices?
Senator McKim, I'm going to ask you to withdraw that.
I withdraw.
Thank you. Senator McKim, had you finished your question? Thank you. Minister Wong.
Well, I think that Senator McKim, if he's worried about people misleading, or I won't use his words, he probably should look in the mirror. He should probably reflect on the fact that the disruption to global energy markets is as a consequence of Iran choosing, to attack countries which were not taking part in strikes on Iran.
Order.
These are facts. These are facts you just ignore.
Order. Order. I'm waiting for silence. Senator Wong, had you concluded your answer? Thank you.
If I may be permitted to finish, the Australian Greens forget and never speak about the fact that the reason we are seeing disruption in global energy markets is because Iran has chosen to attack countries that were not taking part in strikes, against them. No, I love the way you just ignore that have attacked civilian infrastructure, civilian targets.
Thank you, Minister Wong.
You
the time for answering
that.
has expired. Thank you, Minister. Senator McKim, second supplementary.
Minister, you know price gouging is not illegal under Australian law because last year you finally acted to ban price gouging for supermarkets. Why does the government think it's necessary to ban price gouging for supermarkets but is not necessary to ban price gouging for fuel companies in the middle of a petrol and diesel fuel price crisis?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Minister Wong.
There are multiple aspects to that question, and if I can get you something a little more detailed on the supermarket arrangements, and obviously it's a very different market structure where you have much less competition in terms of retail than you do in the fuel sector. But I'll certainly try, and if I can provide you with certain additional information, Senator McKim, I will. But I again make this point. It is so disappointing that the Australian Greens refuse to condemn Iran's actions. Yeah, Iran's actions are causing the conflict, the disruption to global supply markets, global energy markets. And yet, just as I never have heard you bemoaning the murder of tens of thousands of Iranian civilians, I do not hear you condemning Iran when it comes to civilian targets. And that says something about your ethics as a party. It says something about your ethics.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Mulholland. Senator Hanson-Young, we have moved on. Order. Senator McKim. Senator McKim. Order. Order. Order across the chamber. Senator Mulholland.
They just love yelling over women. My question is to the Minister for Industry and Innovation, there we go. For Industry and Innovation, Senator Ayres. The Albanese Labor government is making our nation more resilient by driving investment in our regions and industries. Today, the government announced that it will invest with the Queensland government in securing the future of the Boyne aluminium smelter in Gladstone. What does this investment mean for Australia's sovereign capability, international competitiveness and our energy grid?
Order on my left. Senator Ayres, I haven't called you yet. I'm waiting for order. Minister Ayres.
Thanks, President. I thank Senator Mulholland for that question. The simple answer is because it makes Australia stronger. The Albanese government and the Christodoulou government together announced a $2 billion commitment to secure the future of the Boyne aluminium smelter. And I met with workers and management this morning to make that announcement. And what that does is secures the Boyne aluminium smelter's future through until 2040 and beyond. That is a long-term commitment to central Queensland and its industrial future. It will support directly the jobs of more than 1,000 workers in the supply chain, more than 3,000. It will support engineering firms that employ many thousands of people more. And it will be powered entirely by firmed renewables. This decision will unlock $7.5 billion worth of investment in new electricity capacity. and in new transmission
Order.
capacity.
Senator
The
Canavan and Watt.
CEO of Rio Tinto said
Minister Ayres, I'm sorry. Resume your seat. Order. Senator Canavan, it's not a football match. Minister Ayres, please continue.
Yes, President. If Senator Canavan had his way.
Please resume your seat. Minister, while I had just called the chamber to order, that was really unhelpful to continue to interject. Minister Ayres.
Yes, President. If Senator Canavan had his way, Central Queensland would be closed.
That's right.
If Senator Canavan had his way, Mount Isa would be closed. If Senator Canavan had his way, the Whyalla Steelworks would indeed be wiped out. The CEO of Rio Tinto said today, as fossil fuels become increasingly expensive, this investment, combined with the power purchase agreements we have already signed, positions Boyne to be among the world's first aluminium smelters underpinned by solar and wind power all the way through to 2040. Thousands and thousands of good blue-collar jobs.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Canavan. Senator Henderson. I should not have to call senators individually across the chamber. You are being disrespectful to me and this chamber. Senator Mulholland, first supplementary.
The Boyne smelter will be powered by firmed renewables and, as a part of the deal with Rio Tinto, is underwriting generation, storage and transmission projects. Why are more firmed renewables needed to keep facilities like Boyne internationally competitive?
Thank you, Senator. I haven't called you Senator Ayres. I'm just waiting for Senator Colbeck to come to order. Minister Ayres.
I thank the senator for their question. I see we've got 2010 Canavan in the chamber today. Let me quote directly from the Rio Tinto CEO. He said, as fossil fuels become increasingly expensive, this investment, combined with the power purchase agreements we have already signed, positions Boyne to be among the world's first aluminium smelters underpinned by solar and wind power. It also ensures heavy manufacturing like aluminium smelting can continue in Gladstone for the long term and preserves one of the few fully integrated aluminium value chains in the world. That if Senator Canavan had his way and Mr Hastie had his way, we know Mr Taylor told the facility to go offshore, would be closed today. Well, what we are doing is working with industry to deliver good quality blue-collar manufacturing jobs in regions like Central Queensland.
Thank you, Minister Ayres. The time for answering has expired. Senator Mulholland, second supplementary.
The Albanese Labor government is prioritising investment in Australia's regions to increase our national resilience and deliver good manufacturing jobs. What are the alternative views in the community about the need for regional investment and greater national resilience?
Thank you, Senator Mulholland. Minister Ayres.
Thanks, President. I thank Senator Mulholland for this question. I think this is unarguably the biggest investment in Queensland industrial capacity in our history. And yet Senator Canavan is opposed to it. Senator Canavan is opposed to it. Mr Hastie was bagging it. Why do we find getting in our road when we're trying to make Australia stronger, when we're working with industry to deliver new generation capacity to power new jobs, why do we find that the road bump in the way is Liberal and National politicians relying upon talking points imported from overseas, desperate to export more jobs? When they're in government, they exported jobs. When they're in government, they exported jobs. When they're in opposition now, they import ideas. And they import dumb ideas. They import ideas that undermine the national interest. They import un-Australian ideas. Well, we're going to back Australian industry.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Tyrrell.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister for Women and... I think it might be soon. Senator Gallagher. In recent weeks, there has been significant focus on the power and damage of toxic sexist influences online, thanks to the Netflix show Louis Theroux inside the Manosphere. The show captures how manfluencers target young men with content that promotes toxic masculinity and misogyny. They push far-right nonsense that normalises the hatred of women, often while scamming people out of their money through crypto schemes. How can we stop the online radicalisation of teenage boys?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell, and I really welcome the question because it's an important one, and a lot of this has been the subject of a lot of discussion at women's ministers and women's safety ministers' meetings because it's something that we're seeing in every jurisdiction, and how we support young men and provide appropriate education and avenues for support, I don't think has always been front of mind when thinking about women's safety, because it's often we're thinking about it from the crisis response of responding to what's happening to women, but increasingly with the way the so-called manosphere is working and impacting on women's lives, this is something that governments are turning more attention to. I don't think that it's necessarily a problem like any violence against women and children. It's not necessarily something that a government on its own can fix. I mean, it's a whole of community effort that's required to respond to it. And I would say all of us in this chamber have a responsibility to deal with it as well. I mean, we and I'm sure every woman in this chamber knows the impact of the online abuse that we get, accepting that all politicians get online abuse, but the type of abuse that we get, primarily from men, is of a particular nature, often threatening and sexualised and demeaning. And I think there is a role for all of us in this place to make sure that when we are engaging online, that we are doing so in a way that encourages safe behaviour and also sets the standard as community leaders, political leaders, that this is the way we should be engaging, and I think there are examples where people have fallen short of that standard.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Tyrrell, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Within the school system, there's a respectful relationship content that's been promoted, and it seems to be a great program in theory. There was $41 million put in place for that without a framework that is meant to set standards and ensure work adhere to the evidence base. The framework came out a few weeks ago, nearly 18 months overdue. In the time between the beginning of the program and the release of the framework, states and territories spent half the Commonwealth funding allocated to the initiative. Do you think this has been an effective use of taxpayer money?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. I missed the first bit of your question, but it relates to the online safety framework. Yep. Okay, thanks. Well, Senator Tyrrell, I think we have to work in partnership with the states and territories on this, but not only states and territories, government. I mean, we can certainly work on laws, digital duty of care, the social media ban that we put in place. We can certainly work on that, but we also have to engage more broadly across the community about appropriate standards of behaviour and responses to that behaviour in the online world, which is rapidly changing all the time. And the Commonwealth Government can lead, and I think we have shown our preparedness to lead. I know the Minister for Communications, the Attorney-General, myself, Minister Plibersek have all been involved in discussions about how to make sure that we are dealing with some of, at the earliest opportunity, to deal with some of the behaviour that we've been seeing, particularly with young men.
Answering has expired. Senator Tyrrell, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Look, we clearly need to be stronger to stop shocking manosphere toxic influences and the harm to younger people. And as you mentioned in your first response, there are elected representatives in this chamber that spill hate and advocate for misogynistic policy. How is the government stopping toxic, outdated views pushed by parties like One Nation?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Tyrrell for that question. And look, I go back to my previous answer. I think there is a responsibility on those elected into the Parliament of Australia to conduct themselves in a way that meets community standards and sets the standards about safe ways to engage online, and I think you're right, there are examples where that standard hasn't been met. I disagree with pretty much everything that comes out of One Nation in terms of statements. There's not a lot of policy that they provide to outline. But I certainly do. But they are elected to this chamber, and therefore their capacity to contribute to democratic debate is through their election into this chamber. But I do definitely think that we should, as leaders in this place, engage at the highest standard online, and I'm not sure that's always been the case, and I think it's affected all of us in different ways, the way they conduct themselves.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Canavan.
Thank you very much, Madam President. My question is to the Minister for Trade and Tourism, Senator Farrell. Minister, the Australian-Europe Free Trade Agreement has been labelled by farmers and industry groups as, and I quote, pretty embarrassing, disappointing, pathetic, unfair, simply appalling, a kick in the guts and a horrendous outcome. The National Farmers Federation claims that the deal will allow heavily subsidised European imports to flood the local market and undercut domestic production, while not offering meaningful agricultural market access gains since Australia last walked away from negotiations. 3 years ago, when walking away, you said that no deal was better than any deal. Minister, if you could not get a better deal than the one you rejected 3 years ago, how can farmers trust you to get a better deal in 5 years?
Thank you, Senator Canavan. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Canavan for his question. This is a good deal. The EU Free Trade Agreement is a good deal. In fact, it's a great deal for Australia, and it's going to be a great deal for the farmers that you claim to represent.
Come to order, Senator McKenzie.
It's going to be a great deal for the farmers that you claim to represent. Now, I was disappointed at a meeting earlier today, Senator Canavan, when you decided to tear up the opportunity to work together to promote trade in this country. We had for 4 years, Senator Canavan, we had a bipartisan position on trade.
Order.
And until a couple of weeks ago. Now I know Senator Canavan. I know Senator Canavan, you took this job. You took this job in order to take on One Nation. And in your first outing last weekend in South Australia, your party got 1%, less than 1% of the vote, whereas One Nation got 22% of the vote.
Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Canavan.
Madam President, a point of order on direct relevance. I'm asking what the deal has for farmers. If it's a good deal, you should be able to list that, not talk about the South Australian election.
Senator Canavan, you do not need to repeat the question, and I will draw the minister back to your question. Minister Farrell.
I mean, the Liberal Party didn't even give the Nationals their preference. They didn't even give. That's how far.
Senator McDonald.
This is so not relevant. Farmers are desperate, and this is rubbish.
Senator McDonald, resume your seat. I have drawn the minister back to the question. Order. Order. Senator McKenzie and McDonald, come to order. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. And you're right, Senator McDonald. Farmers are desperate. They're desperate to get rid of the National Party. How do I know that? Because of the votes in South Australia on the weekend. You no longer represent farmers in this country.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Order. 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 I have Senator Canavan on his feet. He's entitled to be heard in silence. Senator Canavan, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. The Australian Dairy Industry Council has said that this deal is unfair on many fronts, most notably expands access to heavily subsidised European dairy imports while failing to secure reciprocal access for Australian exports. The EU provides $17.8 billion of subsidies a year to its dairy farmers, and the average European dairy farm receives 30% of its revenue from government support. Yet the minister has removed Australian tariffs on EU cheese in this deal. Minister, why has the government sold out Australian cheesemakers in this terrible deal?
Thank you, Senator Canavan. Minister Farrell.
President, thank Senator Canavan for his first supplementary question. This deal is a great deal for the agriculture sector. This is a great deal for the agriculture sector, and every hour since this agreement has been announced, a separate group of companies in this country, organisations, come out and say what a great deal this is for the country. What a great deal this is for the country. Now,
Senator Canavan.
President, relevance again. The question was about cheesemakers, and I think they deserve an answer for why their tariff protection was removed from this unfair competition.
Is being relevant. I will remind you. Oh, are you in some kind of debate with me, Senator McKenzie? I will remind you not to interject, because, as you know, the minister is entitled to take your interjections. So, be silent would be my best advice and my order. Minister Farrell, please continue.
This is a great deal for Australia. It means that we have completed the circle of all of the free trade agreements, which in 15 years the Nationals could not do. You could not do it, and we have done it.
Thank you, Minister.
We've finally done it.
Thank you, Minister. I'm just waiting for order. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Madam President. Minister, the government's fact sheets on this agreement say that the EU can suspend trade preferences if a dispute resolution process finds that we have made, and I quote, a serious violation of certain labour or climate obligations. Minister, why would the government trade away Australia's sovereignty and allow a foreign court to decide what our energy and climate position should be?
Minister Farrell.
It's conspiracy, hey?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank
Minister
Senator.
Farrell, I'm sorry. Please resume your seat. Order. 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 It is not appropriate when the minister gets to his feet, the interjections start. You have to listen in silence. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Canavan for his second supplementary question. This agreement, unlike all of the agreements that the Nationals negotiated, has no investor-state dispute clause in it. We have rejected.
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Madam President. I didn't ask about the ISDS clause. I asked about the trade and sustainability chapter and the dispute resolution processes in that chapter. So, on relevance, we'd like an answer on that.
Order. Did you want to? I'm just about to respond. Senator Canavan, you have repeated your question. I think the minister was being relevant. I'm not an expert on the EU trade deal. My apologies for that. But you have drawn the minister back to that part of your question, and I will invite the minister to continue.
Thank you, President. So, in terms of sovereignty, it was those clauses that I just mentioned, the investor-state dispute clauses, that gave other countries the right to challenge our laws, and of course they used them. In fact, Clive Palmer recently used this clause under one of their agreements to challenge us in Singapore. Now,
Senator Colbeck.
We have protected Australian sovereignty in this agreement. We have protected Australian sovereignty. But more importantly, we've got billions,
thank you, Minister.
and billions,
the time for
and billions of dollars worth
has
of trade
expired.
For the farmers.
Senator Payman.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government, Senator McCarthy. The issue of fuel security has been a hot topic in recent weeks, but a key issue that has been forgotten is the government's seemingly mothballed strategic fleet. In 2022, Labor pledged a 12-vessel strategic fleet to end Australia's decades-long over-reliance on foreign shipping. But here we are, 4 years later, during escalating global conflict and supply chain disruptions, and not a single ship is sailing an Australian flag under the strategic fleet. Minister, can you provide us with a status update on the strategic fleet if it indeed is still going ahead?
Thank you, Senator Payman. And before I call the minister, I'm going to ask for silence. And Senator Henderson, speaking directly over me when I'm calling for silence. I do want to remind the chamber this is Senator Payman's question. Senator McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Payman, for the question. Every ship that enters our ports carries something we rely on, President. Fuel, vehicles, building materials, electrical goods and furniture, and the list goes on. Around 99% of our international exports and imports move by sea, so when we invest in our maritime sector, we're really investing in Australia's economic security and resilience. The Australian government has made this a central focus of our transport and infrastructure agenda, and we're rebuilding Australia's shipping capability, including by establishing a strategic fleet, Senator Payman. We're reforming coastal trading laws and we're modernising regulations so the sector can operate sustainably and competitively. And recent events, yes, have certainly reminded us all just how fragile and precious global supply chains can be. And from the current fuel disruptions to the COVID-19 pandemic to natural disasters and overseas conflicts, the disruptions we've witnessed have underscored how vital it is that Australia can rely on its own shipping capability. And that's why our government is establishing a strategic fleet for Australia. This initiative will provide a core group of Australian-flagged and crewed vessels that will be ready to operate commercially.
Please resume your seat, Senator Payman.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister, for the answer. I'm specifically asking for the update
Senator
in terms of
Payman,
the 12
why are you
vessels.
On your feet?
It's a point of order on direct relevance.
Thank you. The minister is being directly relevant, Senator Payman. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Vessels that will be ready to operate commercially in normal times but available to the government when emergencies arise, whether it's a cyclone like we've had recently in the Northern Territory and now WA is experiencing, a global incident or a disruption to an international trade route. These ships will be there to move the supplies our country needs most without delay. So our long-term goal is a fleet of 12 Australian-flagged and crewed vessels. And to begin, we've funded a 5-year strategic fleet pilot program and starting with 3 ships.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Payman, first supplementary.
Minister, in 2024, Minister King announced a 5-year $21.7 million program to create this fleet, citing the need for a resilient domestic maritime sector. How much of this $21.7 million has been released to bolster Australia's supply chain sovereignty?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Well, in late 2024, Senator Payman, Minister King commissioned a review of coastal trading and shipping registration laws so we can modernise the system and better support Australian-flagged vessels. And while the strategic fleet will provide invaluable training opportunities and employment pathways, it's just one part of the Albanese government's plan to build a very strong, fairer and more modern maritime sector. We know that this is exactly what Minister King is working on, Senator. We've seen that in the last few years our support for the maritime sector has also included $10 million in the $30 million Australian-Singapore Low Emissions Technology Program to drive deployment in low-emissions fuels and clean hydrogen. The Hydrogen Head Start program and additional support for investment in renewable hydrogen through the Hydrogen Productive Tax Incentive, which is worth an estimated $6.7 billion over 10 years.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Payman, second supplementary.
Minister, you haven't answered the question of when we will see ships on our coast. And this leads me to my next question of, has the Labor government broken its contracts with unions and workers like the Maritime Union of Australia when it makes promises like the strategic fleet in the lead-up to an election but fails to deliver upon them?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. In fact, obviously the senator hasn't been listening. I actually answered your questions, Senator Payman, so it makes your final question actually irrelevant.
Senator Brown.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Trade and Tourism, Senator Farrell. Yesterday, Prime Minister Albanese announced a landmark trade deal with the European Union, the world's second-largest economy. The Australian-European Union Free Trade Agreement will strengthen our economic and strategic partnership with the EU, a global power that shares our values and support for open and rules-based trade. The once-in-a-generation deal opens a market that has been effectively closed for decades. What does this deal deliver for Australia's farmers, producers and exporters?
Thank you, Senator Brown. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Brown for her question. I know she knows just how important this free trade agreement is for the people of her home state of Tasmania, and indeed it is a landmark agreement. The agreement delivers in a big way on the Albanese Labor government's trade diversification agenda. At a time of increasing trade headwinds, Australia and the European Union have sent a strong signal to the world that open, rules-based trade is the pathway to greater prosperity. Australian farmers and agricultural producers will benefit significantly from new opportunities to access a market that was, until now, effectively closed for many products for decades. The agreement will eliminate the vast majority of EU tariffs on our agricultural products, including wine, horticulture, honey, olive oil, processed food, wheat, barley, as well as most dairy and rice products. For a small number of products, the deal creates commercially meaningful opportunities under tariff rate quotas, including beef and sheep meat. The tariff quota agreement for Australian beef will provide access to 35,000 tonnes per year, a 700% increase in market access, worth $661 million per year. The sheep meat tariff quotas delivers access to 30,851 tonnes per year, a 430% increase in market access, worth about $269 million per year. Importantly, there are review clauses for beef and sheep meat, which means we can return to the negotiating table and press for an increase in tariff quotas.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Brown, first supplementary.
Yes, thank you, President. I have a sup. A broad range of Australian industry has welcomed this once-in-a-generation trade deal with the European Union. They have, yes, that's correct.
Order.
This includes Australia's biggest exporters, the mineral sector. What
Brown,
does this deal deliver for Australian
Senator Brown,
miners?
please resume your seat. Order. Order. Minister Wong.
I couldn't. Point of order. Disorderly behaviour. Interjections are disorderly. I could not hear the senator's question.
Thank you, Senator Wong. I'm sure that the chamber is aware that I am trying my very best. I do expect senators to be respectful when questions are being asked. I've said that I don't know how many times this afternoon. Senator Brown, please continue.
Thank you. What does this deal deliver for Australian miners and, in particular, our critical minerals sector?
Thank you, Senator Brown. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Brown for her first supplementary question. The free trade agreement with the European Union will deliver strong outcomes for Australia's energy and resources sector. All tariffs on Australian energy and resources exports to the EU will be eliminated. This includes tariffs on critical minerals, lithium hydroxide and hydrogen. European companies, including battery manufacturers, have said that the removal of these tariffs will make Australia a more attractive source of supply. This trade agreement complements the Critical Minerals Memorandum of Understanding signed 2 years ago, which is strengthening cooperation between Australia and the European Union on critical mineral supply chains. The trade agreement and the memorandum will support our combined efforts to reach net zero.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Brown, second supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Minister, for that response. Investment is crucial to Australia's prosperity and a core part of the Albanese Labor government's economic strategy. Investment drives economic growth, creates secure, well-paying local jobs and improves productivity, competition and innovation. How will the Australian-European Union Free Trade Agreement secure investment into Australia?
Thank you, Senator Brown. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Brown for her second supplementary question. The European Union is Australia's fourth largest investment source, with total direct investment from the EU valued at $132.1 billion in 2024. The trade deal includes investment rules which will provide greater certainty and stability for investment in both directions. Also, the Australian government has raised its foreign investment screening thresholds for private EU investors, helping cement Australia as an investment destination of choice. This means the EU investors will receive the same treatment provided to other trade partners, including the United States, the United Kingdom and Japan. And true to our word, there is no investor-state dispute settlement mechanism in the agreement.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Wong.
That I ask that further questions be placed on notice.